Hello and welcome to the Tinker's Construct Ultimate Weapons Guide. In this episode I will be going over what the parts are for a ultimate weapon, or at least what I believe are the ultimate parts for a weapon, and the modifiers that you would put on them, and a brief comparison between what I generally use, which is steel, and the best, which is tartarite. Alright, so first up I said I'd show you the parts in the weapons, and the parts that you should use are a blade of the metal of your choice, a paper binding or guard, depending on which type of weapon it is, and a Thaumium tool rod if you have Thaumcraft installed. The reason you use a Thaumium tool rod is because it has the same handle modifier as iron and steel and cobalt of 1.3, and it gives you an extra modifier. So it gives you the extra modifier like paper, but at no cost, aside from the far more annoying metal to get. So that's how you get the longsword in this case. And for a cleaver, what I would generally do is get Thaumium tool rod. There it is. Paper, tough rod and binding, and large plate, I meant, not binding, and then the metal of your choice, and we'll again go with steel. So steel is right there. Alright, so this is how I would build the cleaver. Simply because while you would be gaining a little bit more base damage, switching out for a steel plate, the modifiers that you would add on with, say, a paper plate generally outweigh the benefit of having 1.5 additional hearts of damage. So that's how I would build a cleaver. You just replace the blade with a metal of your choice. But I prefer steel since it has probably some of the best stats for a pretty cheap alloy to make. Alright, so now that we've covered the melee weapons, I'll go over the ranged weaponry. The ranged weaponry is made with a, again, I have Thaumcraft installed, so I would use a Thaumium crossbow body because the crossbow body does nothing except increase the durability of your crossbow. The arrow speed is primarily drawn, or almost entirely drawn, from the crossbow limb. So I would use a Thaumium crossbow body, a metal limb of some sort, a paper tough binding, since the binding does nothing aside from add writable, and because it doesn't count towards durability, and then a bowstring of your choice. I currently have the Enchanted Bow String here, but I personally prefer using the fiery bowstring because that increases the arrow speed rather than subtracting arrow speed. Now, a brief overlook of the arrow speeds of the crossbows. These are ranged from fastest to slowest arrow speed on the metal types that I would consider using, or the material that you would use in the case of slime. They go from steel being the fastest at 9.9, cobalt at 9.5, pig iron at 9.36, bronze at 9.18, manilian, however you pronounce it, at 9, ardite at 8.8, thaumium at 8.5, and slime green at 7.56, and blue slime at 7.2. Now, as you'll note that as the arrow speed gets higher, most of the time the draw time gets far higher. Now, with some examples on the two most extreme cases, the steel being the longest draw speed, it has a base of 6.15, but when you use a fiery bowstring and all the modifiers possible, the 8 that are of total because it starts off with 5. You can get up to 400 redstone total, which will decrease the draw speed by 2.8 seconds, which is pretty darn fantastic. Dropping down the draw speed by almost half in the case of the steel crossbow. Now you can decrease the draw speed a little bit more at the cost of arrow speed, and get an additional modifier if you use the Enchanted Bow String, like I stated earlier. Of the crossbow types that are available, I would say you'd generally want to go with either pig iron or go with a combination of the slime and Thaumium, because the pig iron doesn't have nearly the draw speed but still has above 9 arrow speed, or the blue slime crossbow has a really low draw time for an acceptable arrow speed yet. Alright, so now that we've discussed the parts of the weaponry, we can go on to the next part, and that would be the modifiers. So, in this example right here, I used all the modifiers that you can get naturally in the game on quartz, just for a base comparison between steel and tartarite. Tartarite wins out on all the weapons by a tiny margin, except for on the cleavers, where the damage is the same between steel and tartarite. So that's something good to note, that steel is almost as good as tartarite in terms of damage output. It isn't the best in terms of durability, because tartarite is 3 to 4 times better. Actually, not 3 to 4, 4 to 5 times better than steel in terms of durability. Now, what I would generally do is, on melee weapons, do just this. I am a fan of pure quartz. I like doing all the damage up front. I don't like dots from blaze powder or healing from necrotic bones or anything like that. I just like to do flat damage to everything. But that's just a matter of personal preference. You could get some crazy you're burning for 20 seconds sword if you so desired. But full quartz on melee weapons is the way that I generally go. On the ranged weaponry, at least for the bows and crossbows, I go only redstone on the crossbows, or if I'm making it out of an annoying material to repair, such as Thaumium or slime, I add on a moss to keep the durability maxed out, since moss is good for auto repair. Next, we move on to the ranged weaponry's ammo. The ranged weaponry's ammo is what does most of the damage for the bow, but the ranged ammo, or the damage dealt by ranged weaponry, relies on 3 factors. First is the damage of the bolt or arrow itself. Second is the weight of the arrow, bolt, and lastly is the speed of the time of impact of the arrow or bolt. So, things to note is tartarite in this version of Tinker's Construct cannot be used as a arrowhead, even with default stick and fletching, so you can't use that. Platinum, also, which has the highest arrowhead damage, can't be used, which is pretty sad. So that leaves steel and manulin as the 2 best candidates for arrowheads, because they have high attack damage. Next is Cobalt at 1.5. And next is Thaumium at 1 heart, but gives you an extra modifier, which is always nice because you can get more quartz put on then. So, let's just go with steel for the time being, because steel is a good, easy material that you have access to. And look at the different cores. You can have 4 different cores. You can have blaze, stick, bone, and sugarcane. So stick gives you a weight of 4.6 and an accuracy of 98% with a 15% break chance. It's pretty decent. When you have a blaze, you get a increase in durability up to 126 from 105, plus you get slightly lower weight actually, and worse accuracy, but more ammo is always good. Plus you get a small burn duration of 2 seconds just for having a blaze tool rod. Next up is the bone, which has less durability than the stick, but has higher weight. So that's pretty good. It also has the lowest break chance of 3.8%. Next up we have the sugarcane, which has surprisingly the highest durability out of all of them for a medium weight, very high break chance, and a reasonable accuracy. So of the tool rods that are available, I prefer using blazes for them, for arrow weaponry, because it gives you that extra burn, which, while I'm not a fan of dots, an extra 2 seconds or 2 damage of burn is not bad. I also use slime leaf fletching, which is gained from using shears on the slime trees up on the slime islands that are in Tinker's Construct, simply because they have the highest durability multiplier, and they have a very good accuracy amount. So there we go. Let's make ourselves some steel arrows with blaze tool rods. Alright. Next up we have the crossbow bolts, and I've prefabbed a couple of them because you have to pour a molten metal over a tool rod on the casting table to get the bolt core, and then you attach the fletching, which were slime leaves. Now I'm going to go in what I prefer, which is paper core. It doesn't have very high weight, but it gives you an extra modifier, which is always nice for more damage. Next up we have steel bolts with steel core, which has the highest weight and also a very high ammo count of 137 as compared to 32 from the paper. Next up we have Cobalt, which has higher ammo but less weight. Then we have Ardite, which has even less weight but a higher again ammo count. And finally we have Manulin, which is slightly higher than Ardite and has the highest ammo count. Again, you can't use Tartarite or Platinum or any of those other shiny metals for the bolt cores, because Tinker's Construct in this iteration or whatever is not happy with Tartarite being a part of ranged weaponry. One thing to note about the ranged pieces is if you put a moss on them, they will regen ammo over time. I generally put on 1 to 2 moss because that is an acceptable amount for me. But you have to keep in mind that arrows by default, or bolts by default, unless you use a paper or Thaumium arrowhead, will only allow you to have a maximum of 5 modifiers, whereas if you use paper you'll have 6. So their modifiers are slightly lower than that of melee weapons, so keep that in mind if you use 2 or 3 moss. Now for a little demonstration on the ranged weaponry and the damage model that they have. So this crossbow does 19.5 hearts or 40 damage when it is point blank. Here we have a fresh iron golem, point blank, and it did about 35 damage. So that about holds true. Now if we go back to right here, intersection between right there, it's at 65, shoot it, we've done 30 damage instead of 35. So we've already gotten 5 damage drop off from this short of a distance. But if we go all the way back here, actually hold on, okay, so he's at 35 health currently. Go all the way back here, switch it to midday, aim about right there. And you'll notice that we did 28 damage. So with the fastest arrow speed bow of 9.9, we only lost 2 damage from going from here to back there. So not bad. Kill that golem. He is no longer needed. Next up, we have the Enchanted Bow String, which has a slower arrow speed at 7.7, so right here. Its point blank damage is 14.5 hearts, as opposed to 19, so we're already doing 10 damage less straight up. And it did 19 damage from this far. Point blank, it did 21. So, the damage model is a bit odd, but you get the picture. The further back you go, the less damage you'll do. Just to show you again, have to aim right about there, and there we go. Zoom back in, and we did about 61 to 42, so 19 damage approximately, instead of the supposed 30 damage. So the damage model does drop off over distance as indicated. Now, don't know what was up with that first shot. This is the Longbow. I used a steel limb on one, Thaumium on the other, in paper binding, and then added a bunch of redstone to get the draw speed down. And that is a pretty reasonable bow. It does 43 damage from right here, with the 2 seconds of burning. So he has 56 health. If we jump all the way back to here, aim right about there. And we dropped him down to 5 from 56, so we did about 50 damage. Oh, that doesn't seem right, but the Longbow did more damage. There we go. Alright, so that is the ranged weaponry, where the further away you go, the less damage you will deal, and you'll have to aim up a bit higher. Now, for the crossbow bolts, we can show you the drop off for them. So those were with the manual of 6.97. Alright. So let's just aim from right here. Actually, no, let's go back here. See the drop off. Alright, so aim right there. So that was with the Ardite. There's the Manulin. And I forgot the other bolts. But we can compare the two. The Manulin, which is the heavier of the two bolts by approximately actually 1.5, flew slightly less far because the Ardite impacted the very bottom of that sandstone block, while this one didn't even make it into the little area. Let's grab the heaviest of the bolts, the steel bolt, and see what we do for that. Get rid of that, and we have the steel bolt in the chamber now. We were aimed right about there. Now let's go and try to find that steel bolt. It landed right here. So, as you can see, the weight plays a significant factor in the distance that the bolt will fly. And you have to note again, this is with the fastest arrow speed that you can do, of 9.9. If I were using a slower bolt speed of, say, 7.6, you'd probably land about back here. So, last but not least, we have one extra thing that you can do, and that is enchant your weaponry with various vanilla things if you use a book. Alright, so actually let's not use that because that'll just one shot regardless. Let's get ourselves a long sword of the wooden variety. Alright, so actually let's clear our inventory, grab a wooden longsword. Alright, so this does 4 damage, so grab ourselves a spider. Spider spawn. Long sword. Grab ourselves another couple long swords. And zombie. Alright, so let's set this to normal. So there's our spider. Doing 4 damage. Not bad, not bad. Now if we come over to here and grab ourselves a Bane of Arthropods, we can put that on this longsword. And we are now one-shotting the spider. With the same wooden sword, but it applied the Bane of Arthropods. Now the same thing applies to zombies, so there's a baby zombie. We're doing 3 damage, 4 damage, 4 damage, 3, 4. You get the picture. Low amounts of damage. Now if we come over here and grab ourselves a Smite 5 and put the Smite on. Did I do that wrong? Might have done that wrong. Hold on. Smite 5. Let's try it on a new longsword. So, no modifiers. Smite. Smite 5, there it is. Smite 5, there we go. Alright, so let's get ourselves a new zombie. Wooden longsword. 14 damage. So we're going from 3 to 4 to 14 because we added Smite on. So that is an extra way to get some damage on your weaponry. Note this only works with Bane of Arthropods and Smite. You can also add the enchant Soulbound. So let's grab ourselves a book. Use our handy dandy advanced crafting table. And find... oh, not amphetamine. Quote. There we go. Soulbound right there. Alright, so let's enchant this book with Soulbound real quick. And let's go for this wooden longsword right here. It now has the Soulbound enchantment on it, which means that when I die, I will keep that wooden longsword. Alright, so let's get ourselves killed real quick. Would help if I wasn't wearing this awesome armor. Boop. I'm dead, and look at that. The wooden longsword has entered my... go away. Inventory. So that's pretty nifty that the Soulbound works, and that is an enchant added in by Ars Magica, I believe. I'm not 100% positive on that. There we go. Grab all of our stuff back. Put all that up. So those are the few enchantments that you can put on. One funny thing that I did find is that, okay, let's grab ourselves another wooden longsword. Since we are using wooden longswords as our example. So, oh, whoops, books. So, you can, if you have Mind Chem, put potassium cyanide on your weapon. Now, you can only do up to about rank 5 normally. But let's just do rank 3, just to show that you can do this. Enchantment cost of 5, so not bad. Let's see what the cost is for a higher rank of potassium cyanide. $15. So you can do up to 15, but one thing to note that with these enchanting with the books is it's a little bit gimmicky. Sometimes it'll consume your experience and not do anything. Sometimes it will. Sometimes you can't even do it. Just straight can't. So now we have potassium cyanide, courtesy of Mind Chem. Let's grab ourselves an iron golem. and whack him with our potassium cyanide. Okay. He will now bleed for approximately 80 damage. That'll just stay on him for a really long time, because potassium cyanide is an incredibly powerful poison. Go Golem. So yeah, he's just bleeding out over here. Now to show that he's not in the wall, he'll just keep bleeding out from the potassium cyanide for a very long time. So that is one thing that you can do, one sneaky thing that you can do with your Tinker's Construct weaponry is enchant with an advanced crafting table, or a normal enchanting table if you don't mind the randomness, and then use an anvil to combine the weapon with the book. The only sad thing is it starts having troubles when you add multiple things on, and sometimes they just don't stick. Luckily this time it's stuck, and that poor Iron Golem is going to be out for the rest of his health. So that's one sneaky thing you can do with the Tinker's Construct weaponry. So that is a quick guide to the ultimate weapons. To reiterate, as I should do, you can enchant Tinker's Construct tools with books on an anvil, although it's a bit gimmicky and not really supposed to be able to do it. On multiplayer servers it doesn't work all the time. In single player I find that it works best if you have creative powers. As for the parts to the tools, I generally use Thaumium if Thaumcraft is installed for a tool rod. Then I use paper for the other tool rod if it's a double tool rod item. And then you use paper binding or large plates, depending on which tool you are using, and then the metal of your choice for the blade. I personally prefer steel because it is the closest thing that you can get to Tartarite in terms of damage. As for the modifiers, the modifier quartz is the best all-around modifier because it just adds flat damage. Just adds flat damage. I also like adding on moss to ranged weaponry, and the ammo because it will regen the ammo. So that should cover the ultimate weaponry for Tinker's Construct, and I hope that this will be useful to you in the future. Anyway, until next time, bye-bye now.